also for CJ for inviting me and having me here. I was here, I think, last week or a week before, I think, talking to the Sarva team. Really enjoyed that. So just got a bit of feedback from that. So I think so I've kind of toned down this version just to get everybody hopefully excited about digital, get more info about digital, and please feel free to fire any questions anytime. So just a bit about myself. Now I'm at WSO2. It's not a household name in Sri Lanka, but it's one of those companies that's kind of blazing the trail when it comes to software outside. So we operate on an open source model, and it's a very exciting company to work for. And I manage their digital marketing, email marketing, and the analytics side. My background is in actually marketing, so I've been in marketing for the last 10 plus years, and mostly in digital. My last role was at Intuit QuickBooks, and I managed QuickBooks Online for the UK. Was based there for about 8 years as well, and so got a bit of exposure into the international marketing side also. So to start things off, I thought I'll spark some interest with a slightly different topic. So unicorns eat dinosaurs for breakfast. So if people start wondering what this is about, so the term unicorn is a fairly newish term when it comes to venture capitalists. A unicorn is a company that's valued at over 1 billion at the startup stage itself. So there are loads of companies like that. I just want to show you where the world is moving and just to set the tone there. So the best way to explain this is in 2015, Uber is the world's largest taxi company, and they don't own any taxis. And Facebook is the world's most popular media organization, or the creator of content, but they don't actually create any content themselves. And Alibaba, as most of us know, which went for a massive IPO recently, is the most valuable retailer but has no inventory. And the other example I have is Airbnb, which is the world's largest accommodation provider, but they don't have their own. So these companies have been valued for over 1 billion. So I think a lot of it is about the company, but also about the users and how the behavior of these users are changing. So why digital? I mean, that's an interesting topic. Most of us know digital, most of us think we know digital, most of us want to do digital, but if you actually look at the buyers and the buyer personas, they've changed tremendously over the years. Most of the people are online, as we all know, and SMBs are getting into the social media space. Outbound marketing, more or less dead. People are moving towards inbound marketing. A lot of new trends. So I don't want to go through each of these. I just want to, again, create that kind of platform so that everyone starts thinking why and asking those questions, why digital and why now? A lot of people are online, but then there's this interesting group of people called the millennials who are now beginning to spend a lot, and they have a lot of buying power. An average millennial, I think, is on FB for 12 hours a day, apparently. So, yeah. So there are some interesting stats. I mean, Facebook recently said they had 1 billion people accessing Facebook on a single day. So their active usage of 1 billion, they hit that mark. So that's basically saying the whole of India logged on to Facebook one day. So amazing stats, right? So where is your business? Just want to again pose this question. This is sort of a digital roadmap to say, I mean, it's a simplified version of it. It's good to understand where your business is. Some people think getting Facebook likes is doing digital marketing. I want to prove that otherwise. And people start off in a very basic way. So you do a bit of posts and whatnot, don't track end to end, but then try to outsource it to a company. That model works. And then you get a bit of digital capability by having people trained on it. And then you compete with other companies, and then right at the end is where you come to this optimized stage where you know what's happening, you know what are the touch points, you know how to optimize, what are the cost of acquisition. So this is sort of like the evolution of digital. And this is something that I always try to talk about, the curse of the vanity metric. So this is a graph that shows the Facebook share price that started to change as of last October, and how they changed their organic algorithm. So what I mean by that is, earlier people used to drive a lot of Facebook fans to their page to get to like their products, whatever, whatnot. And then the idea was, okay, you have loads of fans, and then once you start posting organically or just putting posts out, people would respond. But what Facebook have done now is they've changed the scenario a bit. So on average, only around 6% of your fans see a post. So that's pretty interesting, because if you calculate that, so roughly to get a like on your page, you spend about 44 pence. This is in pounds. And then cost of engagement per fan is about 0.03. Whereas if you actually pay Facebook and get somebody, it's only 0.08. So that's the model they are going towards. So they want people to go and spend more money on Facebook. So no point pushing for likes. Likes are such a vanity metric. And again, it shows that 6 times more engagement from non-fans than actual fans. So again, what I always try to articulate is the fact that traditional marketing principles still apply. So you have to still segment, you have to still target the right audience and get the right audience to your base. So if you have people who are engaging with you, excuse me, who are sharing content, I think those are better metrics. I'll talk about it later. I just have a quick video, a bit of a funny one that Adobe has done. Just want to share that.
Yoshi, it's Walter. We're back.
She really loves that thing.
So if they actually knew who's been doing this, or if it was tracked end to end, they would know that this was just an anomaly and not get excited about it. So anyway, oh sorry. So there's a interesting saying by Peter Drucker, who is sort of like the godfather of marketing, or maybe much later. What gets measured gets managed. So what he basically means is, if you can track your marketing, you can improve and you can optimize it. So that's why I always say, instead of likes, start monitoring shares if you are planning on doing any FB campaigns, and also look at engagement and conversions. Try and connect your Facebook to your CRM if possible. There's nothing, it's not difficult. And also there are tools out there like Google Analytics that help you understand the behavior of these people. And in terms of tracking, there are things called UTM codes. Again, big words, but what they do simply is it connects, and you can track from an ad level to find out how it converts. And in terms of content, what is working now is not, if you try to be too salesy or try to sell things, people don't respond to that. If you are helpful, I mean, even our behavior is like that. If somebody is in your face, you won't buy. But if they are helpful, you will. So those things still apply. And get your audience involved a lot more. We see that happening with companies like Coke a lot. And basically what they say is social media equals word of mouth. Word of mouth marketing is what traditional marketers used to push for. We still do. But social media is that people actually go on social media, research a lot, and they actually come to in the buyer, in your marketing funnel, they have already done the research part, and they come and they know what they want. So if you are not on social media and if you are not educating them, then you are missing the bus over there. And then connecting your marketing to metrics, that's what I talked about earlier. We need to understand our marketing funnel and connect each of these channels to the funnel, and understanding channel roles. For example, Facebook might be really good. I mean, people used to say, okay, it's a B2C kind of a platform. But I work in an environment where it's a very competitive and a very niche B2B targeted industry. So in that, we see Facebook performing really well for us. We see a lot of people who see our stuff, download our stuff. They come for our workshops, mainly through Facebook. So Facebook can work if you do it right. And the key thing is to connect Facebook or whatever the engagement you're measuring, and also measuring the right metrics. And spoke about the funnel, and also get to know your customers a bit better. There are lots of tools out there. I'll show a few later on that can help you understand your customers a lot more. And again, I'd like to say, like, just because they like you doesn't mean they will buy. So another real life example, the guy over here likes McDonald's a lot, but he doesn't buy from McDonald's, right? So I would like to compare Facebook likes to that. So people are just because they come and hug your restaurant doesn't mean they will buy. So similarly, if we can track and if we know who's buying, then we can optimize campaigns. So this is an interesting line that says a fool with a tool will always be a fool unless there's actionable analytics. That's my version of it. This is actually an image from Google Analytics. It looks very complicated, but what it basically shows is somebody who's come to your landing page, then goes to other pages, and basically the behavior of them on the site. So this helps me to understand my marketing funnel. So they come to the page, they come here, but then they drop off at these points. And this is another tool called Crazy Egg. There's another one called Hotjar. So these are basically new tools that are out there. This does a heat mapping of your website. And these are so this Hotjar is actually free until 1,000 sessions. So you can actually use that. Now what it basically does is it looks at the people's behavior and kind of tells you where they are clicking. So for a designer, this is amazing. Like they'll know, okay, people are interested in the top left and they are clicking on this CTA, call to action, and they are hovering around here. And also where there is lots of heat, that means people are interested. So that sparks an insight or an interest. I'll quickly show you a live example of it. This also can show you the click behavior of people. Sorry, I'll get this. I just did some last night, so that won't take time today. So this is our support page, and this is actually a user trying to navigate through the support page. So there are these red lines, that's when the action happens. So now he's landed on the page, he's looking at the page, and then at this point you will see something. So he's clicked on the form, he wants to contact us, but he is not filling it. And then closes that, and then there's some behavior that happens over there. So the cursor is still here. So he's scrolling up and down looking at our pricing, and then moves up. That's his cursor, by the way. And exits. So he's most probably a Mac or a Google Chrome user who closes the browser from there. So this is the kind of thing that is available right now, which is pretty cool, right? I mean, if you know this type of thing, then you know what your user behavior is on the site. And then you can, for example, if they are dropping off after, so this is 44 seconds. And if you know that on average, your user on a site stays for about maybe 50 seconds, so then that means this guy has dropped off early. So what you can do is, if the user is on a site for 50 seconds, you can create something called an interrupter that says, okay, you're looking for stuff, how can I help you more? So there are lots of variations of the site you can show to them. So I won't bore you with those things, but move on to the next slide. Sorry, I have another video. I like videos. So this is actually about Google Analytics. They've let you watch it. They've created a real life example of a landing page.
People who bought olives also bought Chardonnay.
Oh, all right. 78% of people who viewed Chardonnay also bought What to Do When He's Not That Into You.
Well, I'm just wanting to get some olives, so.
Why not buy all three?
Because I don't really need them.
It'll give you a total saving of 7 pence.
I think I'll still pass, actually.
Just the wine then.
No, sorry. What? You didn't know. Excuse me. Excuse me, I'm not buying this wine.
You sure you want to remove that item from your basket?
Yes.
Why not try something new?
What, and buy something totally random that I've never shown any interest in?
Wilson Cape Memorial mug?
Yeah, okay, I'll take the mug. Obviously I'm joking, aren't I?
We actually use Google Analytics quite heavily at WSO2. We do a lot of experiments through Google Analytics. Even before, so there's a new concept called, I'm not going to talk about it later, so I'll just talk about it now. It's called the Lean Startup. So it's quite popular here now. It's very entrepreneur driven, and basically people don't nowadays create a product. They create the concept, they put it out, they see whether it works, so that you don't have to spend a lot of money on a supply chain, developing stuff, and then to find out that your product is not working. So at Intuit, my previous company, we had a product called QuickBooks Online, which is an accounting package. We created new features. So we knew somebody who connected their bank to QuickBooks Online, converted at a much higher rate. That was based on theory, but we wanted to test it out. So we didn't have an online banking feature. We just put it out, saying we had. Traditional marketers would say, no, that's going to be a negative impact. People are going to say, you know, you're just promising things that you don't have. But what you're actually doing is you're not showing it to everybody. So through the site, you can actually split your site traffic. You can show it only to 5% of the people. So, and then right at the end, you can say, by the way, this feature is still being developed. Once you put dollars in front of a person's behavior, it completely changes. They come and sign up for newsletters, they download stuff, but when it comes to buying, it's a completely different thing. I mean, it's the same for most of us. So if you can test that behavior before that happens, that helps you save a lot of time. So, and that is what Google Analytics is about. It can give you that real-time view of how your site is performing, how people are performing, where they are dropping off, who's these people. So Google won't tell you the name or whatever, but there are ways where you can find out the designation and from where they are coming from, which can help you understand your potential markets, for example. So what can social tell you? So I'll talk about the good. So this is actually an example from a local company. I won't reveal it right now. I don't know actually whether there's anybody from there. But. So there are social tools out there where you can analyze the social behavior of your either Facebook or Twitter or whatever audience. So I've just taken the Facebook audience of this particular company. So I did this last week at Sarva also. So basically this tells you that whenever you post something, the most engagement comes in the night and also at 4 p.m. And then let's go down. So that's basically the day posted. So the most popular dates, and I believe it's Saturday on this corner. And then these are some of the other engagement types. So if this company posts an image, people really love it. They share it, they do a lot of things. If they ask a question or if there's a poll, then that's quite popular too. This is the company, it's Maggi. Anybody from Maggi around? No? Okay. Cool, okay, awesome. So I compared Maggi with Kottumi, I think. That's the one that I got. So you guys are really good at your social. So there's a lot of engagement, people are sharing stuff. And this type of post, so recently Maggi, I mean, I'm sure, I hope I can talk about this. So there were a few issues with Maggi. So what these guys have done is they've tried to take the attention away from it. And now they're talking about, they're going on the theme nostalgia, I think, right? Yeah. So they're talking about, so I'm guessing the audience is, I guess somebody like me, or my age, I think, who knows these people at least. So they're talking about, okay, tag a friend who wants to play this game. They've got this old game that they're talking about, and then recently there was a very interesting post. They've put some Maggi noodles around this caricature, and I think it's Chitral Somapal, right? Yeah, so that was pretty cool. So, but I'll show you what, so this is the good, okay? And this is the bad, or could have done better, I think. So amazing post, really loved it. People have been sharing it. I think close to 14,000 people have shared it or liked it or whatever. But you could have asked at least people to do something. So if you're going on that fun concept, why not ask them to maybe create their own so that it impacts and they go and at least buy a Maggi packet and do it. So I think you guys are really good at showing brand stuff, which is amazing. So you're building the brand, but then there's no tactical offer and there's no CTA. CTA stands for call to action. So usually if you put a post out, you should have a call to action either to a site or somewhere else. You have a hashtag called, I can't remember, sorry, here it is. It's called Devil Dana Kamare. Okay, so that's the hashtag that you're promoting. Hashtags are good, but people don't search for Devil Dana Kamare, right? So if you have a hashtag that is more relevant, then that will be better for you. And also have a CTA that goes to at least a page. And then, so I mean, you can tie it up with some of the other legends of music on a weekly basis. And the key for social success is continuation. This has stopped, but this is actually one of the best posts that you have put out there. So there is an insight there that this type of thing appeals to the audience. So try and do more, ask users to do a lot more. And this is the ugly. So since I talked about the good and the bad, so there are some videos about Maggi, and whenever you guys have put a video, there's been negative feedback on videos. And look at this, I mean, people are saying a lot of things. Some guys talking about wax in Maggi noodles. So, but then luckily Maggi has been listening to them. They've come. They're saying, okay, by the way, Maggi noodles doesn't have that. It's not proven. Here's a link to an article. And then some people are talking about it a lot more. The article doesn't work. So it goes to your website, the website doesn't work. And it says, we are sorry, the page is. So then what's happened is after this, all these people are jumping on your, on the bandwagon, and they're all kind of having a go at it. Apart from one guy or girl who says, wow, it's so tasty. Everybody else says, oh, the ugliest clip I have ever seen, stupid ad. Some guy wants the Tamil version of it. So that, I mean, that's what happens. If you don't address it, people will jump on it. And then again, if you go to the Maggi page and try to find out the web URL, you say for example nestle.lk, that's what happens. So the URL is broken. So Facebook says this page is not available. So there's something up with the URL, or I looked at it, it's okay, but there's something going on with your site. So just need to figure that out. And I have another video that actually shows how a negative sentiment can or be made positive. It's actually a real life example. It's a bit brand building-ish, but it kind of shows what you can actually do. So they got some bad feedback on social media about their campaign, ad campaign, and then they turned that into a positive. Again, this was shared much more than the previous ads, and they won both the times. So good old days, people used to say customer is king, customer still is king, but nowadays content is moving up. People actually want free content, and there's free content available out there. So a lot of marketeers are pushing for content marketing, and this is actually the most recent survey done by this company called Smart Insights. They are kind of well known in the industry. And then this was, so they interviewed some marketeers, and around 30% of them wanted to talk about content marketing being the next big trend. By content, it doesn't have to be a technical white paper. For Coke, content is about video. They want people to share a lot of things. One of the biggest content marketeers or marketing companies out there, believe it or not, is Red Bull. We don't sort of identify Red Bull with content, but they do a lot of content marketing, including the crazy stuff, the serious stuff, and also the funny stuff. So they combine everything together, and they have an amazing content strategy. And then next up is big data. Marketing is not fluffy anymore. People rely on a lot of data and insights, and big data is key. I have some examples later on that I can talk about. And then marketing automation. So this is basically the list of stuff that people think is going to change the digital marketing sphere in the next year or so. Another interesting trend is opening up your world. So what I mean here is community driven content. A lot of people, so this is actually a very interesting example of TripAdvisor and Lonely Planet. People don't even talk about Lonely Planet. They just identify Lonely Planet with that book. Whereas TripAdvisor is where everyone goes. They want to go and find out if they want to go to a hotel or another country. Everything is on TripAdvisor. So this graph we got from Google Trends. If you don't know Google Trends, it's a really cool tool. You can, it's free. You can just Google for Google Trends, and then type in any search term you want to find out. It can be very useful. You can, actually I can show it to you. So I remember once we used this, we were launching a few new features in a product. We didn't know what to name them, whether it was, I can't remember, it was I think online banking or banking online or whatever. And then we put it on Google Trends to find out what was the most searched item, and then named the product accordingly. So I can say advertising, oh sorry, digital marketing. Okay, wrong spelling. I'm not saying newspaper is dead, but it's just you can you can compare any search term. So if you want to compare election news versus something else, you can do that. So it's a really interesting tool where you can compare stuff. So that's where I got the TripAdvisor versus Lonely Planet. So people who've been searching for TripAdvisor has been going up, whereas Lonely Planet has been going down, mainly because they've opened up their community, so their site. So people can actually go on TripAdvisor and talk about things. That's the latest trend. Even from a SEO or search engine optimization perspective, if you have your site opened up, people actually like that. They think it's the trust factor. They trust you a lot more. And TripAdvisor is reviews given by users themselves. So they trust the user as opposed to you dictating something to them. So that's where the world is moving towards now. So here's something about big data that I'd like to talk about. When I was at QuickBooks, we tested this out using some data. So QuickBooks Online is a 30-day free trial. So you can come online, sign up for QuickBooks Online, use it free for 30 days, and then you need to pay if you want to use it more. So what we did was, so the user comes in to the site, signs up for that, and then we got the data in real time. So something that we know about QuickBooks is people go online and do certain activities during the first few days of the trial, which means, and some of those activities have a higher weightage. So if you do, say, online banking within the first 7 days, the likelihood of you converting is much higher. So likewise, we also know if you do something else within the first day or two, the likelihood of you converting is much higher. So what we did was, there's a tool called Splunk. This is not free, but you have to pay for it. Basically, this tells you when a user is online and who the user is. So because of the form, we know who the user is, what their details are. So when they were using the product, because I mean, if you think about it, if somebody is using the product, that's the best time to talk to them. And if they're stuck, that's the best time to help them. So we fired up a call during the first stages of usage. And we got the data from Splunk. It gave us real-time data. Okay, user X is using the product and he's stuck there. Our guys call them and fix the problem, and then they convert. So this improved conversion rates massively. It's a tiny example of how big data can be used. So big data can be very, very useful, especially if you get the right data at the right time. This is so importance of digital marketing. I think we spoke about this a lot more earlier. For some reason it's not. Okay, so like I mentioned earlier, the buyer behavior is changing. People do a lot more person-to-person research before they come online, buy something. So for example, in our business, which is a B2B business, around, so this is a stat that LinkedIn just put out, around close to 90% of the time, they have made their decision. So they make the decision elsewhere. They don't come to your site. They've heard about you, or they go to a price comparison site or a feature comparison site. They ask other users. So they do all of this beforehand. So you need to be there. And mobile search is actually skyrocketing. So this is something that Google is advocating and pushing quite heavily. Mobile search actually has outperformed desktop search. In some industries, desktop-based searches and desktop-based behavior is still there. For example, in ours, around 70% of our users are still using a laptop or a desktop. Whereas most of the world, we are seeing people are moving towards mobile. And then conversions can be tracked. Yeah, sorry.
What's the implication of that? So mobile search growing means that our formats have to be mobile friendly.
Yeah, so that's the usability side of things. And the other thing is, if you want to place an ad, and if your ad is running on a laptop or a desktop, the mobile user doesn't see it. So your ads have to be mobile optimized, your ads have to go on mobile, but I'm not seeing a lot of mobile related conversions. The behavior is usually people consume content via the mobile. Think of your own behavior. If you get an email or a newsletter, the likelihood is you most probably read it at home or whatever, or on the way, and you use your mobile to read it. But if you want to buy something, you would actually prefer to go and sit somewhere and buy it, right, online. So that's the behavior. So from a mobile perspective, what should be done is you should raise the awareness of your brand through content or whatever from mobile, and then convert them through desktop. So that's what's happening right now. Hope I answered.
Sorry, one question. Do you think going forward there will be increase in native apps, or do you think it will be device adaptable screens, so that you have the web front ends that will be adaptable to multi-devices, or or do you think the native apps will continue?
Good question. So we actually had a similar chat yesterday with our CEO actually. So we were looking at some of the traffic that came to the site, and we were looking at some articles that was published. So now the trend is mobile optimized sites bring in more traffic and native apps don't. So for people who don't know native app is something that is on your iPhone. For example, if you have an app on your iPhone, that is a native app to that phone. Whereas optimized sites are a version of your website which is optimized for the mobile. So the trend in terms of traffic is towards, not towards apps, but towards optimized sites. So that's the trend we are seeing, yet to be proven. But in terms of the data, that's what it's telling.
Are you saying that corporate apps are not as savvy as it used to be?
depends on what you use. So corporate apps can be, but then based on the target audience. If it's appealing to the audience, then it is. But people have the features in apps are very limited sometimes, and people have found out ways of searching differently. They are used to whatever set and they are used to expanding a site, and the site has more data, whereas the app doesn't. I mean, I know there's a hotel app that I tried to use. It's a local app. I thought there'll be an offer, or at least the user journey would be simpler, but it was not. Whereas I'm used to that desktop, seeing that whole site, and then the optimized site actually served my purpose. So I don't want to generalize and say corporate apps are bad, but I think moving forward, if your site can be optimized, that might be helpful than creating an app.
I think the question there is the fact that the apps, the user experience between the web and the app, there's a huge delta. So now the trend is that from the web to the multi-device user experience should be seamless. And so no one has learned that as a new thing.
Yeah. There's something called HTML5 where people start building apps on that so that it's universal across all mediums. But you're spot on. I mean, the app renders differently on different devices, so people don't want that. They actually prefer a site that is friendly and it looks at least native, as opposed to having an app. So there are new payment methods. I'm sure most of you know there's mobile payments that's coming up. M-commerce is actually the number one thing that Google is advocating for. They're saying people are going to buy more and more through mobile. I'm not seeing that behavior right now, especially in our context in Sri Lanka and Asia, but actually saying that in India, M-commerce is huge. People access the internet via mobile and they are much more accustomed to that. That's mainly because of infrastructure issues, nothing else. And also in Sri Lanka, there's, I think the latest figures are there's 20 million or 21 million people, there's around 60 million mobile phones. So 3 phones per person, roughly. But most of those phones are not smartphones. So, but we are getting there. In terms of smartphone penetration, they're saying we have 100% penetration. So hopefully there should be 20 million smartphones in Sri Lanka. And out of the 20 million, around 60 to 70% are Android, not iOS or Apple.
20 million smartphones?
They said, in 2014 the figures said.
I don't think smartphones. Mobile penetration is about 90%.
Mobile penetration is actually more than.
About 90%, but then again, the smartphone, I estimate, I think it was 2 million, 2 3 million.
So based on the cheap, well, not cheap, but the Chinese Android phones, they are saying, so smart is not the smart that we have, but at least a device that can help you go online. There is 20 million, so that's the figure I had. I'll double check in. So internet penetration, yes, but mobile penetration completely different.
But in mobile, is there a difference between how internet penetration overall per se is measured, the metric for that, versus how many people are accessing the net through their mobile device?
Yeah. So
are they 2 different metrics, or is it the same?
Yeah, 2 different. So internet penetration is based on your typical whatever the router or whatever you have, and the landline concept. Whereas through mobile, it's they look at the device and also the connectivity from the mobile. So 2 different. So internet penetration is low, whereas mobile penetration is high, and connectivity through mobile is higher. So that's and Sri Lanka is actually one of the countries that has high mobile penetration.
Yeah, I think in terms of the internet also, I think Sri Lanka is ranked pretty high.
Yeah.
Than India and number 74 among 150 countries.
Smaller denominator also.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll move on.
I just wanted to ask you,
Yep.
those the Google Trends.
Yeah.
Can you take that, let's say, country-wise?
Yes. You can. They offer like I think 20 or 30 countries. So all the major ones are there.
No, can you, for example, say digital media searching in Sri Lanka?
Yeah, Sri Lanka is not yet there.
Okay.
But so from US to EU, most of those countries are there. but slowly they're adding everything. So Google Trends.lk is there, so you can search for it, but then they automatically put the US data on top, but then you can filter down and figure out potential Sri Lankan search base kind of thing, like a random, not random, but somewhat accurate number. Yeah, yeah. So here's another video.
Digital media consultant is here.
Thank you, Tina.
Hey, Richard.
Phil, go ahead and say that stupid thing you said to me earlier.
Oh, measuring ROI on social media is a myth.
Yep, that's it.
Maybe you can measure ROI on social media. I think you can measure ROI on social media. You can definitely measure ROI on social media.
Huh.
I might call the cops.
Phil.
Really?
Really? Phil. Come on.
So yeah, ROI can be measured and conversions can be actually tracked. It's done. So people can't come and say that impressions or likes are the metrics that you should be looking for. You should be asking, okay, can you show me how these people have been converting, how these people have been buying? It's difficult in a B2C environment, for example, because people don't buy necessarily from online media, but you can do localized promotions a lot, give discount codes, voucher codes, whatever. You can track end to end and get a feel of how social media is performing. And there are some interesting even companies like Facebook are actually helping you increase your conversions now because they know the demand is there. On Facebook, there's a feature called lookalike audiences. So what that does is, if you have, say, for example, 100 email addresses of your highest converting audience, say in an example, so for example, you have a event that you have, and then from the event you collect 100 emails and you know these guys are going to convert. You can upload that to Facebook and say, create me a lookalike audience. So what Facebook does is, it looks at the behavior patterns of all these people, and they give you a much larger pool of people who are similar to them. So rather than targeting everybody, you target your lookalike audience so that you convert a lot more. So those kind of things are coming up. Google has something like that. LinkedIn has something called audience expansion, same thing. So a lot of companies are now moving towards conversions. And then there's something called integrated marketing. I'm sure all of you know what integrated marketing is. Being a slightly traditional marketer who's moved into digital, I strongly believe in integrated, because just because somebody wants to do digital doesn't mean your user is purely on digital. There are other mediums that people consume. So, and also there's a saying, so search is what converts. That's the good old saying in digital marketing. If somebody searches for your brand or something regarding your brand, the likelihood of them converting into a customer is much higher because the intent is there. Whereas if somebody clicks on an ad and then it takes a long time for them to convert. So search is quite high when it comes to conversions. But the interesting thing is you can't make somebody search. How can you make somebody search? So that's where all the other mediums come in. So you have your radio to TV to press. So those things increase your brand. And then once people get to know the brand, they go online. I mean, if you look at the latest Super Bowl media buying, still the TV ad, 30-second TV ad is like $5 million or something. Whereas the search war happens a month before. So people are now integrating both. Here's another actually a video of how Coke have used integrated marketing, and I have an example from WSO2 that I can share later on.
Last September, in the dead of night, the world's most iconic brand did the unthinkable and took an entire country by surprise. 150 of Australia's most popular names appeared on millions of bottles of Coke. Why? Because in the previous month alone, 50% of teens and young adults hadn't even tasted a Coke. we had to reconnect with Australia. So we decided to get personal. The internet blew up straight away, but we kept quiet. And while the buzz grew and grew, we recruited our fans and made them the face of our campaign. Then, on Australia's highest rated media weekend, we came clean and invited Australians all over to share a Coke.
Kate and Kate, the two Kates. Classy Kate. Crazy Kate. If you know a Kate, share a Coke with Kate, or Mel, or Dave, or Jane.
Our message was everywhere, digitally and interactively at Sydney's iconic Coke billboard. Whichever way you turned, it was you and your friends up in lights. The media instantly took notice, blogs lit up. Australia had fallen in love.
Coca-Cola. Share a Coke.
Thousands of requests poured in for more names, but we were ready. With kiosks where you could get any name printed on a Coke can. People couldn't get enough, queuing for hours. But the requests kept flooding in. So we put it to a vote and asked Australia who they wanted to share a Coke with most. And after 65,000 people got their say, 50 new names were released. We invited everyone to share a Coke, and share they did. Whether old or young, drinkers or non-drinkers, friends searched for names, tagged one another, shared stories. Australians everywhere were once more connecting over the world's most iconic brand. And with the holidays looming, we celebrated and shared a Coke with a friend who brings a smile to every face. In just 3 short months, 5% more people were drinking Coke, sales transactions grew by 3%, volume increased by 4%, an 807% increase in Facebook traffic, 12,020,000 earned media impressions, 76,000 virtual Coke cans shared, 378,000 extra Coke cans printed at kiosks, and one country painted red. With one simple tweak to a label, Coke once again became part of popular culture.
So that's a great example of how Coke used integrated marketing. Even though the main message went online, they used the billboards, TV, radio, everything to spread the message so that it captured the audience. This is something that we did recently. So email, I consider it to be traditional marketing now because it's evolved to such a level. So we have an email campaign that goes out to people who download our products. So we know people who download a WSO2 product converts at a much higher rate than anybody else, not people who come to a webinar or whatever, it's the people who download. So what we do is we send an email series during the first week of them downloading. So the first email goes immediately, it's a thank you mail that talks about getting started and then how you can be an expert, blah, 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 the support mechanisms we have. And then the next email talks about the expert insights, the video recordings we have, and some features about the product. Then we promote some case studies, and right at the end we push for them to contact us. So this is a very simple set of emails. So we looked at our open rates and the click-through rates on email, and open rate of the first email is about 45%, which is very high in email terms. Usually give or take, it's about 10 to 15% if on a good day. So this is a highly engaged audience, they open, so nearly half of them open the email, but half of them don't. Similarly, once you go down, this is typical email behavior, once you go down, after a while it drops. So open rate is 30%, 28, 24. So your funnel kind of reduces. So we were thinking, okay, how can we get to the other 50%? So there's an option called remarketing via Google. So remarketing is basically looking at who comes to your website and then market to them via a Google ad. So you don't actually open up your advertising and get people to click on your ads a lot more. That is a different way of advertising, but remarketing is done only to the people that you want to see the ads. So we marketed our ads to the people who downloaded the product. So if you want to know how we targeted them, so there's a Google code that you can put on the thank you page of the product. If somebody goes to the thank you page, that means they have downloaded the product. So that's why we put it there. And then through that, we identified these users and we started showing them ads. Believe it or not, this is working really well. Our cost of acquisition for this is about $56 per user. Sorry, not per user, for the whole ads. So we had about 170 something downloads during the test period. And for all 170 downloads, it was about $56. Usually our CPA or cost of acquisition is about, depending on the channel, it can be about $70 to $80 per user. Whereas here we spend about 56 to get 170 something. And through this integrated marketing via remarketing and email, we managed to capture most of the base back and engage with them. So that's something that we did when it comes to integrated marketing. So this is the social media landscape in Sri Lanka. So we have about 600,000 people on LinkedIn and around 3.3 million people on Facebook. If you take the 15, 16-year-olds out, it's still about 3 million. If somebody says there's not enough people who are above 50 or whatever, there is actually a sizable population. So Sri Lanka is actually hooked onto Facebook. We are seeing a lot of advertising done on Facebook in Sri Lanka. And even on Facebook, a lot of people try to put just ads or video ads. But what you can do is you can even do remarketing there, and the lookalike thing I mentioned earlier is actually working really well for people who want to actually cut down on the budget and target the people that they really want to target.
Can you get a psychographic profile from Facebook?
Yeah. So I'll actually show it to you. That's actually a recent feature that they gave. So you can sorry. When people are looking, it's difficult to tell. It's always difficult, right?
Yahoo.com.
User. I have an interesting theory for, okay, few more slides and then I'm done. So these are a few social media hacks. I've already talked about it. So you can expand your reach through the lookalike audience targeting. I've talked about it earlier. And you can find out where your potential audience is. So this is actually, I'm thinking from SMB point of view. In Google, for example, if you create a Gmail account, you can, once you create the account, you can invite friends. So, and it tells you how many of them are on Google. So similarly, Yahoo has the same thing, Microsoft has the same thing for Hotmail. So what we used to do was we used to upload a set of email addresses. So Google thinks it's my friends, but I upload, it could be a list of customers, potential audience. We upload that and then Google tells me whether they are there or not. It's a very basic thing that you can do free of charge so that you know which channel your audience is. But now there are advanced stuff you can do also. And then understand your users through FB Insights. So FB Insights is what I was talking about earlier. It can actually tell you the purchasing patterns of your audience, where they are. I mean, the firmographics and the demographics, most of it they can tell you. Google Trends, I spoke about naming products, something that we did before. If you're not sure how to name a product, or if it's a new feature of a product, if you want to know whether people would take it up or not, go to Google Trends. Type in whatever the word you want to search for, it will tell you whether there is demand for it or not. Basically, that's what search is, right? And then you can actually target your if you have a, so if you're a SMB and if you have a massive multinational as a competitor, you can actually go on Twitter, if these customers are on Twitter, I'm assuming, you can actually target your competitors' followers through Twitter by just saying, so if I have a soft drink or whatever, if I want to target people who are following Coke, I can target the handle @Coke, and I can put ads like that. So Twitter just opened up paid advertising for Sri Lanka about 2-3 weeks ago. And then something that I've seen working really well is asking employees to tweet and post messages. If you like it or not, people are going to be on social media. They will start talking about it. So why not use it as a for a positive cause? At WSO2, we have about 400 something employees. Around, I would say, at least 95% of them are on social. And we also encourage people to write blogs. Blogs is a great source if you want to get your site ranked high on Google, so SEO wise. We have about nearly 400 of those people actually write as well. So we have bloggers. And all of those blogs are linked back to WSO2 through various links and whatnot. So Google operates on this principle of relevance. Google wants to direct users to sites that are relevant. So just because I search for API management or something like that doesn't mean my site will come up. So there's a lot of factors that are influencing that. So I think my next slide is that. So here's the typical Google screen once you search for something. So we've searched for a Samsung TV. If you want to get your brand here, you have to pay for it. So Google is basically an auction. There are auction groups and you can go and bid for certain keywords. So if I want my site to come up when somebody searches for API management, I go and bid on that keyword so that it comes up. And this is the one where there's a bit of a yellow background. That's where the paid section is. And that's also called PPC. You can drive traffic. So PPC stands for pay per click. And you pay only for a click. And then here is the organic side or the SEO side of it. So if you want your site to come here, actually people trust this a lot more than this. I hardly click here because I trust my organic search a lot more. So if you want your site to come here, there are a lot of SEO activities you have to do. And blogging is one, and having relevant links so on other sites that come here, and also having relevant content on that page. Nowadays, Google actually penalizes if you have a lot of irrelevant backlinks. So what people try to do a lot more is to make the content relevant. If you have a video which is relevant, Google, the bot crawls all over and it assumes that this is the most relevant piece and it pushes it up. Social links are quite good. If you have G+ accounts, G+ is going to be killed off, that's what they're saying, but for the moment it's there. Google+ or Facebook, whatever, those links are good. So they assume those are trusted backlinks. So this is a few acronyms that people use in digital. So PPC stands for pay per click. CPC is cost per 1,000 impressions. So there are some ads that we use for branding, for example. So we want more people to see, not people to click. So in that case, you bid for impressions and not for clicks. And then CTR is click-through rate, that's used in email and digital. So if you want to find out if your ad is performing well or not in that audience, you need to look at your click-through rate, not just the impressions. So if people are not clicking on it, then that intent is not there. CRO is actually quite a buzzword at the moment. It stands for conversion rate optimization. Basically what it means is you optimize your site and your marketing funnel without spending any money. I'll talk about it later, I have a slide later. And then Google Analytics, I showed you guys. And then earned on paid, or EOP, is a way that people measure a lot of the media spend and the conversions. And then remarketing is what I showed earlier, where you actually follow a user through the cookie ID of the user based on their behavior via Google. LinkedIn also they've just introduced something called the LinkedIn Lead Accelerator, which is also a remarketing tool. So what happens is, it's mainly a B2B tool. If somebody comes to your site and if they are on LinkedIn, you can actually put ads on LinkedIn to show to these people who come to your site. And LinkedIn also has some publisher sites. So it's actually working well for B2B companies. So conversion rate optimization. So this is a typical marketing funnel. I mean, it's actually WSO2's marketing funnel. We get a lot of people to the website. They convert into raw leads. A raw lead is somebody who downloads a piece of our content. And then after about 3-4 months, they become a sales qualified lead. And then what happens is we forward this to the sales team and they band qualify them. So band means budget, authority, need and time. So if these 4 factors are met, then we assume they are good to become a customer, and we sort of engage with them in a much more deeper level. So as marketeers, what we try to do is, so there is a conversion rate, right? Just because 1,000 people come to your website doesn't mean they convert. So there's a drop-off point here at each of these points. So we try to improve these conversion rates through different means. Some of the ways is we use tools like Hotjar or Crazy Egg to find out the behavior of people on the site and see where they are dropping off, and also Google Analytics. There are lots of experiments that we can do via Google Analytics, and it helps us to kind of figure out something before we launch it. One thing that we recently did was we have actually I have an example. Oh, this is one example of a CRO test. Can anybody say what's different between the two? Can you spot it? Attention to detail. Sorry? Which one? Blue one, right? Yeah. So this one talks about price. This one talks about authenticity. And the sale of this watch, it's the same watch basically, but this version increased sales by 107% just by changing that. So the only variable that changed, it's Seco approved dealer something, so it's that give the whole authentic thing and it's not fake and all that thing. So people were not worried about price, they were worried about that. So they tested this before they put the page out. So that's the beauty of CRO. So that will help you put the right one out and get the most conversions. And through CRO you can make incremental changes, tiny changes. Impact is massive. So this is something we did internally. This is our contact us page. Very simple. We talk about the officers on our officers, and then we have a form here. What we did was we added some of our customer logos here just to show that okay, we have big customers who use our stuff. And then this was actually a multivariate test. So we had another variation of the test here that said, please fill this form and we will respond to your query within 24 hours. So these are, I mean, this might sound obvious, but this had not been done. So we put it there, and this is the original, by the way. So this I took from Google Analytics. So variation 1, which is this, had a conversion rate of 1.42, whereas this had a conversion rate of 1.23. So that is an increase of over 150% when it comes to, when you compare with the original. And we looked at it after 3 months. So what we did was we amalgamated these two versions, and we now have these logos and the SLA on top. And that's improved our contact us form fields by 70%. So tiny incremental changes that can really impact. So that's the beauty of CRO. And that's still not a, it's a buzzword. It's still not popular here. People just do changes. People just put out something just because the highest paid person in the company says so. But through CRO, you can actually prove them wrong. You can tell them, look, the data says something else, and you can make that big impact. I think this is one of my last slides. So what does the future look like? Mobile is going to be the future, especially in terms of usage. It's easy, people have it, people consume a lot of content through mobile. So you have to optimize your site. That's the minimum you have to do. Google recently changed the algorithm. So if your site was not optimized, excuse me, it would not rank up as well. So there's a tool out there, excuse me, that will help you actually see whether your mobile is optimized or not. And then predictive modeling is something that we actively do at WSO2. We look at the behavior of our customers and then we try to predict that they are going to convert or not. For example, somebody who downloads a product, looks at a webinar and attends a workshop, converts into a customer at a much higher rate. So what we do is we give a score to each of these behavior points, and also we look at the company. So if you score a person as opposed to the company, what happens is in the evaluation process, if there are more people involved and if you only give a score to the person who fills up the form, then you ignore the rest of the people. So there's a new theory called company scoring that's come up. you score the company, you give a weightage to each of the actions done by the person, the region, whatever. And then what the system dishes out is a set of leads that can be passed on to sales and be converted. I know it sounds a bit up in there, but it actually works really well, especially when there's a sales team who always tells you that your leads are crap, they don't convert. So this is the best way to identify the best leads and pass them on. Gamification is something that's out there right now. People are, especially the millennials, are used to playing games, and most of the UI or the user interfaces of websites to apps to everything looks a bit gamish at the moment. So whenever people design new products or SaaS products or whatever, they design it, it looks like a game, and people actually respond better to that kind of design. Marketing to millennials, I talked about it a lot. And then marketing has 7 Ps. One of the, actually the 7th P is physical evidence. You don't actually need to have a physical product, especially in the service industry. There are lots of 30-day trials or free trials that people give. There's augmented reality. People can actually feel things or see things. I've actually seen a lot of those things at events where there are some interesting solutions out there where you can actually touch and feel a lot of things, and it's all augmented. So you actually can challenge the 7 P in the 7 Ps of marketing. A lot of companies have significant digital marketing budgets. I think last year was the first time that digital actually took over traditional media in terms of global spend. And people actually want to experience a lot more. So that's again the free trials that are coming up. People want to experience the product before they buy it. And if you don't allow that, then people won't do it. So there are few models, there are the freemium models and the premium models, but you need to have a hybrid of those, especially if you have an online product where you can ask the user to come and try it out before they buy. And then that whole try-buy thing happens now. People don't just go and buy. And then attribution modeling is it's a couple of big words, but what it basically says is, even in digital marketing, it has evolved. So for example, if I click on a Google ad, and then the same company shows me, actually a good example is Hamidia's. I think somebody does remarketing for Hamidia. So I went to the Hamidia site, then got an ad for a certain type of shirt that I searched for. I didn't click on it. And then I went on their Facebook page, and there was something about shirts there. Clicked on that, and then I got a newsletter from Hamidia's, but I actually clicked on that and finally bought it. So in traditional digital marketing, all the dollars would be allocated to that last click. But that's again becoming a bit of a vanity metric, because what you're doing is, if you attribute all your dollars to the last click, you're ignoring everything else, all the other touch points. So if you, for example, if Hamidia's guy thinks that, okay, his newsletter is converting because people are buying through the newsletter, and he puts a lot on email marketing and he ignores everything else, he won't see a big impact. So he has to look at all these other models, other touch points. That's what attribution modeling is. And tools like Google Analytics now have models inbuilt. By the way, Google Analytics is free. There is an enterprise version, but the free version is so much powerful as well. And there are models built in Google Analytics where you can track this behavior and find out which channels are actually attributing, not just the last click. So there are the linear attribution models. I mean, I'm not going to go there, but there are various ways that you can attribute your dollars. And then big data, spoke about SaaS, software as a service. A lot of people don't buy the typical CD anymore. They go on the cloud. Adobe, who have Photoshop, if you talk to a designer, I mean, they would still prefer to have the CD, but they changed that completely. Now you have to buy it over the cloud. So businesses are moving towards that, and SaaS is something that's changing the game. So finally, I mean, change happens. We need to embrace change, but we need to verify. So just took this picture from Modi's visit to the Facebook headquarters recently. He seems to be embracing change quite heavily. But overall, I just wanted to say that a lot of things are changing, and sometimes we miss a whole cycle and start something, and then we think we are right in front, but we have missed the complete cycle. So there are testing tools out there. It's always good to test. It's always good to verify before you invest a lot in one medium. Even though I'm a digital marketer, I still believe traditional marketing works and it still helps to bring in more people to that top of the funnel. So that's about it. And these are just some of my social media links. So hope it was useful. Any questions that I can answer or anything that I can say additionally?
I have one thing.
Okay.
A lot of us are used for Facebook. Could you just explain a few scenarios with LinkedIn, how powerful? I know you use LinkedIn a lot.
Yeah.
Could you
got
just
the bottle.
right. Could you just
Yeah.
some success stories if you can?
Yeah, for sure. So LinkedIn is predominantly a B2B marketing tool. There are lots of professionals who are in there and a lot of small business owners. LinkedIn has a few options. Actually, I can quickly show you. I keep forgetting this is not my laptop, it's his laptop. So this is the homepage of LinkedIn, and LinkedIn have now started pushing in a lot of content. So this is something that this girl shared. It's an organic post, but LinkedIn has an option called sponsored posts. It actually looks exactly like this, but you actually curate that and you create that, and the user actually thinks it's very native, and LinkedIn is promoting it, so they actually trust it a lot more. Sponsored post is something that's working really well for WSO2. From a cost of acquisition point of view, it's actually much better. We get a high, again, we operate in a B2B environment, so it's very successful for us. The cost per lead is actually far less sometimes than some of the other main channels. But they also have another option called InMail, which is this email service where you can actually directly email them. But there are some caveats. For example, if you want to target a group of people through InMail, you have to have a minimum spend of $5,000. But if you are starting off as a small business, for example, if you are selling off point of sale systems and if you want to target hoteliers, good channel, you can actually do that. And they offer you two options. One is the sponsored post, the other one is the display, the typical display ad that you see here. So an ad like this, for example, you can't buy directly. You have to work with LinkedIn and their marketing team. But there are other smallish ads. Just trying to see whether there's an example here, but no. So there are other ads that come here, so you can actually place those ads. I'll quickly show you the back end of this. So LinkedIn also has other solutions. If you have a HR team who wants to recruit people, they have these talent solutions. Again, can be a bit expensive from a Sri Lankan context, so we are not willing to spend a lot on certain levels. But if you want to recruit senior people, it works. So this is our company page on LinkedIn, and we have about 13,000 followers. I actually give a much higher weightage for LinkedIn followers as opposed to Facebook. But So this is a piece of, well, it's a campaign that we ran. The architect or the enterprise architect is somebody that we target quite heavily. We want to talk to them. And then we created something called the Architect's Vault, which is a landing page or a little web page that has a lot of free content for them. So they come and download a lot. And here's some of the results of this particular ad. So organically, so we have about 13,000 whatever people. Out of the 13,000, they managed to show, so there were about 12,000 impressions. So one person could have had 5 impressions. So ignore that. We had 148 clicks. So out of the 13,000, 148 people clicked on it. We had 121 interactions, and then the click-through rate was 2.18. But then we sponsored it, and look at the increase in impressions. So we managed to show this to a much larger pool of 143,000 impressions, and then we got 1,000 plus clicks. So this is actually performing really well for us. So this is what paid can do. It can actually augment what you're doing and complement also, because this content is very relevant. And at the back end, you can target people based on their designation, the country, where they studied. So there's a lot of options at the back end. So that's where LinkedIn is very powerful, and also the audience is very professional. So I think around 600,000 users from Sri Lanka are on it, and it's growing.
Something that I kind of realize on my own, I don't know whether I'm right or wrong, that the frequency of visit to LinkedIn and to actually browse through, as opposed to Facebook, where I hear somebody say why we are on Facebook is we are obsessed with other people's lives.
Yeah.
This you don't find. So to what level do you find response in that sense?
Response, if you have a very targeted audience, then this works. So in our case, since we want to target these 3 people, basically the CXO, the enterprise architect and the software developer. So those 3 are there. They come here, they trust the content that's on it. So because of that, it works for us. Whereas they don't, I think they are not on it for 12 hours. Whereas Facebook, it's the whole frequency of it. So that's how the different channels are working. For example, if you're using Google, Google has there's something called the Google Display Network, where they have the breadth, they cover most of the channels, and you get the volume. Whereas here is mainly the quality. So depending on your target audience, it would differ.
So targeting professionals, this is a better
for sure
bet than to go to Facebook.
Yeah, but sometimes so on Facebook, what we realize, so you can't isolate channels and do either. On Facebook, what we see is people who come to our workshops tend to sign up to our workshop forms through Facebook for some reason. So what we feel is they are on it, and then they kind of trust what their peers are saying. Whereas on LinkedIn, they come and they consume a lot of content. So their mind is set to download stuff, and also they are expecting recruitment type of emails to come in. And LinkedIn has a lot of curated content that they send from their publishers. So it's a very content-driven site, and like you said, very professionals. Professionals are in there, and you can target professionals through that.
Any more questions? So we'll call it wraps.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Salia.
Yes.
And thank you everyone for coming and taking your Friday and coming here. I really appreciate it. So we'll call it a wrap, and again we are hoping to have another session in another 2 months or so. We'll see you then. Thank you very much.
I think we should thank you,